You're listening to Were You Still Talking?
They pump out your blood and they pump in a new batch of blood, and all of it is the blood of children.
All the big stars are going to be on TV now. I mean, it's just the way it's going. Your role, I think, will be played by Brad Pitt.
What'd you wear? I wore my loincloth wrapped around my feet.
Are you going by John today?
And that's absolutely true. You feel it in every cell in your body.
Yeah, you can bend the truth and bend the visualizations no matter what your political affiliation.
You could have an alpaca. A girlfriend's daughter recently got married, and they had llamas or alpacas at the wedding.
A recording room. They recorded a couple songs in the kitchen of Rumbo.
So, wait, you microdosed before this, right?
What? Hey, welcome back. This is Joel Albrecht again, and in my studio today, I have Giles Howe. Not House, like my wife, but Howe. And he is so accomplished that I can't even begin to do a real introduction on him, because he is a producer, writer, performer, mostly in theater, musical theater, but also in all types of music, has performed literally all over the world. He is from England now also teaches now. A big part of his current study is teaching, which is also study. And we're here largely to talk about his new concept album for something called Soviet Zion, which is a really amazing project. And since I can't even begin to describe it, I'll just start talking. So welcome to the studio. Thanks for being on the Zoom with me today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
You're so welcome. This project just it looked really interesting to me, as well as, you know, the other things you've done, all the other work you've done. You've done a lot of work. You've been doing this, performing for a long time. You must have started in grade school?
Well, I've always been kind of creative and involved in musicals and expressing myself through music, and that's something that I've done since I was young, I suppose. It's something that it's been a constant throughout my life. I guess I'm quite lucky because my father is a musician and my brother is a musician as well, and my mother was an artist. So growing up, there was a lot of access to culture and different musical influences to encourage me to find my own voice musically.
Yeah, that's always awesome when you grow up in a family like that. It's extremely helpful, and extremely helpful. And let's get right into this album first, because this is the thing I know you're wanting to promote the most, and I'm very curious about how. First of all, where did you find this history and this idea for Soviet Zion? And maybe you could just describe it a little bit, since most of the people listening probably have never heard of it. What is it?
Sure, it would be my pleasure. So I had a creative partner called Katy Lipson, and we had together written a rock opera, and we wanted to write something a bit more sophisticated, a bit more grown up, and with a bit more ambition to it. And we were both very interested in connecting to our Jewish heritage, and we were looking for a piece, not a piece, we were looking for a story or a theme that was very unique, a unique story to tell. And I went to Israel with an organization called Birthright, and I came back and I realized that I knew very little about the places that I'd been to visit and the experiences that I had had the opportunity to explore. And so I was reading, and I was reading articles, and I came across a footnote in it that mentioned Azerbaijan. I thought it was that. It said in the Jewish Autonomous Region, and I thought, well, that sounds rather interesting. And I looked into it, and it ended up that there was this whole land, this territory set aside in Siberia, not far from Siberia, in the far east of Russia, as a land for Jewish people. And I thought, well, that's fascinating as a Jewish person, how I can relate to that myself and that history. And then how does the story of this history, of this place that no one really talks about, this entire country that came to exist, how does that story parallel the other Jewish national narrative? And so I was very interested at that time to explore questions of how I could relate my Yiddish cultural heritage with the idea of belonging somehow in the Middle East. And so I wanted to write something that explored some of those questions, and it seemed like a really it ticks a lot of boxes for me as a piece to write about. It was fascinating, it was historical, no one really had there's not really anything similar to it. And if I find it fascinating, then perhaps so will other people. And when I've spoken about it, this topic, to people inside and outside of the community, very few people have heard of it and are fascinated, just like I was, to learn that there was this failed state that still exists, and it's full of people. I mean, not many of them are Jewish. Most of them are from Russia and elsewhere, but the history of this place was very much tied to an identity that is part of my own. And how interesting that I can somehow relate myself geographically to Siberia through some of the ideologies and ideas and themes that run through this work, exploring this crazy bit of history. And so 12 years ago, I embarked upon it, and I thought, what's the most ambitious thing I could possibly do? 4 people around a piano, no, that would be too easy. We've done that. Let's go for a full, screw-composed, symphonic, large cast. And then just as that was coming together, I thought, well, let's just do it in Yiddish as well. So, so we have a very distinctive piece that has 2 versions: the English language version, which we've just recorded, whole thing front to back as a operatic radio play. It's just been released, which is what I'm most excited to share with you. We also recorded a selections album of extracts from the show performed in Yiddish, and I'm very happy to share that with you. It's been a lot of work has gone into it. I knew that when 11, 12 years ago, and I thought, yeah, this is the vision I have. I didn't underestimate it then, but I think maybe I did a little bit.
It's extremely. I guess I didn't read enough. I didn't realize there was an entire Yiddish version. I'm pretty sure I was listening to the English version, or suddenly I understand.
I hope so. It would make more sense.
It made a lot. Yeah, it did make sense. So it must have been the English, and it's really fun. It's a really, interesting story. It draws you right in. It's been. The last time I thought about a concept album, honestly, and this is going to age me, was Jesus Christ Superstar. That's the last concept album I have had heard about. So it seemed like a new old idea. Like maybe a lot of people do it, but I haven't heard about it for a while. I mean, the idea is really just to get more people to hear it. Isn't that right? Isn't that really a big part of it?
I just want to go back to something you said a moment ago. I think, unless I misheard you, you said the word fun, and I don't want to mislead anybody. It's definitely not 42nd Street. It's
not. It's not.
It's quite epic and meaty in its scope. But it's definitely, there are certainly moments of light relief and lighter moments of intrigue. But
yes, it has some ancient jokes in it. I picked up on that early on.
But regarding concept album, well, many successful musicals began life as a concept album. I can think of several right off the top of my head, and we figured what with a couple of things came into play. What with currently it's the middle of a pandemic, and there are so many factors affecting live theatre. We, for example, in our rehearsal period, we had to wear masks and visors.
Right.
We had to social distance. We had to air out the booths between people. We had so many considerations, and we weren't doing anything in front of a live audience. So just to think how at this time, how much uncertainty there is as things change from minute to minute, and suddenly in one place one thing is allowed and in another it's not. Like right here in Florida, there's very little restrictions, whereas in the UK, people can't mix from households. You're not even allowed to walk down the street with more than one person at a time. I mean, it's anyway, the point is that there's such uncertainty and so much change that it seemed like a very attractive option, because also, like I said, this is a very ambitious piece in its orchestration and its the sound it delivers, and that's very difficult to do with a live orchestra, but we have been able to create these orchestrations in such a way as it facilitated a live recording that delivers this big orchestral experience, much larger than it would be in a theatre even. Because if you think normally when you're writing or orchestrating for the theatre, you have to think, well, how much budget do I have of the tickets I'm going to sell to pay for the orchestra? How many musicians can I physically fit inside the box? And how few can I get away with to maximize the sound with as little spend as possible? And so you've got these very different considerations, and that can lead to compromise. And I didn't want to compromise on this sound. It was an opportunity to have all the bells and whistles that I have had in my head.
Right.
So we have these wonderful, very lavish orchestrations that lend themselves very well to a sound recording, really, rather than necessarily to debuting them as a live experience. So the concert album seemed like a natural way to bring this to audiences who otherwise have their regular access to culture currently curtailed. And if it's not safe for you to leave your own home, but you still want to enjoy a theatrical experience, well, this made sure that this medium meant that it could be shared with people all over the world. And we have such an international team working together, it only made sense that we want to share it with as many people as possible.
So did you record it all over the place in different countries, or were you able to bring everyone to one studio or one city and do it there? How did you actually work that out? Because it's an amazing achievement. I'm amazed at all the work that's happening right now, because I know the entertainment industry is really, really slowed down, but there is a lot of work that is happening, and people are doing what they need to do to make it work. So how are you able to do that?
Well, the orchestrations were recorded here in America. I think in Baltimore. Actually, I've never met the person that I worked with orchestrating. We've had a very productive working relationship and a great friendship, and yet we're yet to meet. But I think he's in Baltimore, and that's where the orchestrations were created. And then I took them with me to the UK, and we recorded a very limited window, we and indeed it was indeed a very short window, absolutely full of drama. Let me just say that, for example, they announced the national lockdown where all non-essential businesses had to close, apart from everything that wasn't a chemist, a pharmacy, a drugstore, or a restaurant. Just these were not a restaurant, like a supermarket. So drugstores and supermarkets. Everything else was closed. So our sound recording studio had to close, and we lost it. And so we had to. We had to take over a school because schools could stay open. We took over a school, hired the whole floor of the school, soundproofed it, created booths, bought in all the equipment, magically transfigured this school into a recording studio, and just all kinds of crazy dramas and scenes. But
well,
it's theater,
I mean,
isn't
as difficult as it sounds, it also sounds amazing because, I mean, that you were able to just keep going and keep thinking up new things and, create a space. Because
there will be so many people that if I'm used to doing theatre in a grassroots way. I mean, that's how I cut my teeth. So it doesn't matter if you don't have a budget or a costume department or whatever. You make do. You make happen what you need to with what you have available. And if you have challenges, you have to just face them. And I haven't done live theatre, or I haven't produced a piece of theatre like this in a couple of years. So it was extra challenging, blowing off the cobwebs, as well as dealing with challenges as they came. But I spent many years doing just that. So it was like stepping back into a pair of very well-worn boots.
Right. It wasn't your first production, and it wasn't your first production of this piece either. You started 11 years ago with Soviet Zion, is that right?
Yeah, it was conceived about 12. This is its 12th year since it was first a twinkle in my eye, and we first did a little recital of it, a recital of selections. It was 3 singers, Katy and myself, and we were in a theatre above a pub, and it sold out. We did just one evening of show, and it was just us, a piano, and these singers, very tentatively singing these demos. And then we were very encouraged, so we continued. We did it again. Now we had a working draft. I say working very loosely. We had something that had a beginning and an end, and a big ramble in the middle. And we presented that, got it on its feet. By hook or by crook, made it happen. Had a large cast, and I don't know how we made it all work, but we did that, and it needed it was clear at that point that it needed what direction it needed developing. It certainly wasn't close to being a finished piece at that point. So we brought on a book writer to join the team, and he transformed it into a book musical, and that gave us the opportunity to give the characters a lot more flesh and bones, deliver a lot more information much more quickly than we could if everything was sung. And that completely transformed the piece. And so rather than just kind of loosely brushing on the ideas of the kind of political context in which the stories were happening, we were able to really explore how is these goings on affecting these people, not just in this emotional singing way, but in their repartee and in their interactions with each other. So I'm rambling now. We developed the piece a great deal. we staged it in concert in the London Jewish Museum, which was beginning to look a lot more like it does today, this recording. And since then, I have created new vocal arrangements. I have created new orchestrations, which really define the piece. That big orchestral sound is really integral to, I feel, to distinguish the piece. And polished it, trimmed it, cut some of the fat, and polished it until it shone like the top of the Chrysler Building. And yeah, so it's. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a finished piece. I would hope that as it gets developed for the stage and for a fully staged presentation, which is yet to happen, that it might just get better and better as more people collaboratively involve themselves, as it develops for the stage or possibly for the screen. Who knows?
Who know? Oh, is that a hint? Have you already got some interest?
I'm not. I don't wish to give anything away. But I would say we're well prepared for interested parties to avail themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But right now we're open to suggestion. We have this piece. It's not like anything else, and it's not a little flyaway piece. I hope it's got some significance to it,
right?
Because of the way that it can relate different people to different current events,
mm-hmm.
questions of their own identity and their own sense of belonging. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and see.
So how are you able to? It is a very, like you say, it's a very large piece. It's a very weighty piece. Was there a lot of information to find out? Were you able to get a lot of information, or because it's such an unknown story, it seems to me. It's sure nothing I've heard of before. I think it's new for a lot of people. Was there a lot of history to draw on, or?
So one of the things that made it most interesting to me as a creative is that there was very little to draw from compared to other nation-building endeavors or similar social experiments. There's often a wealth of footage, but there's very little, really. And I read the books that were available at that time. Some of them are more accessible than others, and some of them were more inspiring than others. But this isn't a history lesson, so I'm not trying to necessarily tell people, this happened, and then this happened, and this happened, and these are the dates, and this is the history. It's more a tale of human courage and perseverance and endurance and trials of the human spirit, rather than a history lesson. It's how do these people cope with the challenges unique to their endeavor that they face, and how do these different characters cope with each other? For example, the one character is the spoiled girl from Malibu who loves fur and wears a red lip, and she's quite buxom and very outspoken. And just how does she adapt to her life in Siberia? And how, when faced with similar challenges, how does she rise to them differently than, for example, the lead character in the show, who has a very different set of circumstances and is trying to get her husband released from prison amongst all other sorts of trials that poor woman endures. I mean, I have to tell you, we took her iron a little bit out of the fire before. She had some awful tragedies happen to her that no longer happen. She now keeps her eyesight, She doesn't have a child eaten by a bear. There's lots of, I mean, she's practically living in paradise compared to how terrible a lot she had when we first started writing the piece. But she certainly still has a lot of
Yeah, that's amazing, and how that must have been difficult to change it and not have her child eaten by a bear when she's living in Siberia. That's that's a hard thing to take.
Temptation was huge. I mean, there was a reason that it had to happen. I won't even go into it, but something very distinctively Siberian had to happen in order to justify this whole other thing that no longer happened. So it's crazy how pieces get written and changed, and I definitely hope it's changed for the better, because that would have been a really shocking.
Well, I know this is a strange thing to say, but I do hope you have to explain over and over that it's not a history lesson, because the more you have to explain that, the better it's doing. The more people are hearing about it, the more people are seeing it. Because I noticed that a lot with things I see. I mean, it even happened with Hamilton. Hamilton has gotten all kinds of guff because the characters aren't like the, there's inconsistencies in there in the history. And it's like, well, yeah, it's a play, it's a musical. It's probably closer to a history lesson, but it's not. It's based on these characters, and it's a very creative way to talk about certain aspects.
Exactly. If you want history, read a book.
Exactly.
If you want to see somebody's expression of how that history made their imagination run, then watch a musical. Better you should watch a musical and be full of questions about, okay, well, that looked like an inconsistency. Well, great. That's a question that you are now asking yourself, and you will be inspired to go out and find the answer. Great. Your brain, you will be inspired, and your knowledge will expand, and everyone's a winner. As much as I hate Hamilton, and I thought,
But it's true what you're saying. I mean, that's what art's about, is inspiring people, and making them think about something they might not have thought about, or think about something differently. That's a big part of art, or making them feel something they might not have felt before they saw the piece. So that's an awesome piece of it. And this one definitely, that's one of the great things about a piece like this, is that I'm sure there's a lot of people like myself who are going to be like, wow, this is completely different. This is a new piece of history no one knew about, which there's a lot of things in Siberia I'm sure no one knows about. It's not a country that most of the world knows a lot about, except that's where they sent people when they screwed up during World War II. If you were in the Russian army, that's kind of the main thing that people know. Oh, I was just looking at some notes. I think I asked almost all of those things, so now I'm going to have to wing it. I did want to talk a little. How did you have time? I mean, it looks like you're a very busy performer, producer, writer. Where did you find the time to put this idea to music and story and all that kind of stuff? I mean, did you have some?
Well, I'm very stubborn, so if I've decided that it's going to happen, then one way or other, I'm going to try and make it happen. And I will say it is, well, it's a balance. It's a labor of love. There's a lot of tedium that goes in. Normally, something like this would be a whole team of different specialists would come together to collaborate and create each their own. They each bring something to the table. But because this is done with such a small creative team, and I've been doing a lot of it myself, I've had to do a lot of very tedious things to make it happen. But there's also been some wonderful, wonderful moments making it happen. Like writing the thing itself is great. I sat at the piano with Katy, and we would just outward pour music, and that's really, that's magical. You take it for granted when you're around musicians or when you're in the flow of creating music, that this wonderful melody, that this earworm that people may sing for hundreds of years to come, or that will move people, or just to sit there and out. That's magic. And so a lot of it happened just as part and parcel of our friendship, and part and parcel of our creative trajectories at that time. So I wouldn't just, it's difficult to answer. Yeah, I think that's the best answer I can give to your question, is that a lot of it was just a pleasure, and the stuff that wasn't a pleasure, well, it wasn't an option not to do it. So, and a lot of it, all of it's a pleasure, even the tedious stuff. I've learned, for example, I use a really primitive notation system, and through having to use that to get from my head onto paper something I can communicate and then bring people together, has hugely advanced my own skills and knowledge. So even the tedious stuff has been worthwhile. It's been worthwhile. It's worthwhile. It'll be worthwhile if people enjoy it. But even if I'm the only person who ever will enjoy it, then even then it's been worthwhile. I've met some really fantastic people. The girl that I translated it into Yiddish with, I've got to find out all about her upbringing and her way of life, which is completely different from my own, and learn a whole new language and connect with fantastically talented people. There are some cast members who were in the concert we did in the Jewish Museum, as well as this recording that we did in London, who are just mad as boxes of frogs, and I love them. Just wonderful people that I'm so happy that our paths have crossed through this creative work, and I hope to meet many more wonderful, crazy creatives through it.
That's always one of the best parts about working with creative people is, they're often mad as a box of frogs, as you say, but that's what makes them so great.
In the best way.
In the best way.
That's the great thing about working in creative arts, is that you meet such colorful people, wonderful people.
Right.
Yeah.
And now, and you're getting to pass that on as well. How long have you been teaching? Have you always taught? Voice? I know this is a bit of a swing, but I'm also interested in that part of things.
Sure. No, I haven't always taught. I've always been, but I've very consistently been involved in coaching people or mentoring people, or just kind of helping bring out the best in people through their own creative expression, or confidence. So it's something that kind of came very naturally to me, also especially having worked producing, when you're producing in grassroots ways, you're so involved in the creative process. It's not just fundraising, writing a check, and it's not a hands-off thing. It's a very involved process. So I was always involved in kind of bringing out in people what I saw in them, and so teaching came very naturally. And then with my experience as a performer, I felt that I had skills that I could then pass on to others. And at first, I was a little nervous, because even though I'd done bits and pieces, it was a different context, and also young adults. A lot of my students are about 14, and that's there's a lot of responsibility to be working with someone at that age, because they're very impressionable, they're very delicate, and the role that you can play in their life is hugely significant. Little things that you might say that are misinterpreted become enormous issues. You know what I mean? Big deals for people at that age, and you have to be very careful how you communicate, and but then equally, when you do achieve a good communication, how quickly they develop is just wonderful. I love it. I am so proud of my students, and I have quite a distinctive. What I like is quite distinctive, and I said to them, you go to another singing teacher, they're going to give you a totally different approach. You, as your individual, you're going to find your own way, but you are with me right now, so I'm going to
so I'm going to teach you this.
And I look very much at the truth in the text, and that should inform every decision you make. But I like risk taking, and I like people to sing in slightly extreme parts of their voice, and I think that's clearly reflected in my writing. I don't want to listen to someone not take risks. I want to listen to somebody emote on a heightened level, because that's exciting for me in theatre. If it was pedestrian and it was just, oh, you know, I would like a loaf of bread, and oh, would you also like some eggs? No one cares. Do you know what I mean? I like theatre where,
I do know
where
what you
you're
mean.
compelled into this heightened way of communicating, because whatever it is that you're communicating is bigger than you. It's bigger than your speaking voice. It's bigger than your normal mode of communication. And that's what I'm there to see. So it doesn't matter if I'm there to see The Little Mermaid or The Color Purple or whatever. It doesn't matter. I want the same heightened sense of the heightened delivery of emotions, because that's, and so I won't compromise. That's what I demand from my students, and so I throw them in at the deep end, and I have them sing Verdi's Requiem on 1 week, and then we'll be singing, I don't know, The Wiz not the next week from week to week, but we jump from really diverse material to try and explore how many different voices there are within the voice, and then how to connect them together so that when you sing, you're not singing just on one level. You're involving as much contrast and diversity within your sound as you can to achieve the maximum emotional delivery. And because that's the kind of delivery that I find exciting. And my students do me proud. They probably think I'm bonkers. But and whether they take the technique that we work together in the room out into the world, that's up to them. But what's very gratifying is I can see that they find their voices and the strength of their voices and their confidence, and they can take a text about something that they have no personal connection to, or let's say, and they can act it. They can put themselves in the shoes of somebody having an experience that they've never had and fully commit to delivering how that might feel to an audience. And they grow in their confidence. And it's like watching a flower bloom. It's great. And when it's not great, it's very frustrating. And I'm learning that I have less patience than I thought I did for beginners. I thought I had this deep well of patience.
That's funny.
Drawn from forever, but no, I do not. It is, but I enjoy working with all my students because each one of them has a different challenge. But each one of them takes huge steps forwards every time we work together, and that makes me very proud. Very proud of them.
Well, that's awesome to see. You kind of lit up when I asked about the teaching. So that shows that you're probably very, very good at it. I mean, teaching's it's an awesome thing. I mean, when you can teach and when you can pass on what you know, and you have a lot of experience in it. It's great that you're able to pass that on, and that you're able to see how fragile students are, how fragile people are at that age. Because I mean, people are fragile at every age, but it helps if teachers can see that when they're working with someone who's 14 and
I remember being that age myself, and I remember the influence that certain people had on me. and how instrumental they were in creating my sense of self and my confidence. And when they were able to see me at a time when I wasn't really sure that anyone, when I couldn't even necessarily see myself and lots of other people couldn't, and they would just say, yeah, I see you, and, you know, thumbs up. That's very empowering, and it's an honor to be able to do that for somebody else. And yeah, no, it's a huge honor, because also if you think about it, at that age, a lot of, it's not true for everyone, but a lot of people don't get necessarily that one-on-one attention, especially if they have many siblings, or if their parents are working, or if they go to a school with large classes. There isn't necessarily much opportunity for them to have a one-on-one time with, first of all, with an adult or a young adult. I mean, and very specifically about raising your voice and speaking your mind and being confident. And I think singing lessons, even if I have students with very small voices, they're not going to ever do anything. They're never going to be a great singer. I mean, not to belittle them at all. It's just their instrument is limited in what it can do. But the confidence that learning to work with what they've got has given them, and the doors that it unlocks otherwise. Okay, so you're not going to be an opera singer, but you can deliver. You could deliver a PowerPoint presentation and have the marketing department in tears with the tool. Do you know what I mean? Or,
that's true.
Or just, I've had a couple of students in particular who said, they would never give themselves permission to take up space in the room. And now they walk into a room and they're just like, you know, yeah, I'm going to let you have it. And I'm really happy to have been part of that, delivering them their sense of young adulthood, you know, and it's lovely. I'm really happy to be part of doing that.
Well, I think that's the beauty of acting, personally, acting and performing. I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, as they say, which is why I switched to drums, because I found out early on that I was tone deaf younger. Now that I've engineered for a lot and helped other singers sing into a mic, I can now hear notes, but I can't sing them. At least I can hear. But it makes, but I've acted for a long, long time. And anyone who can be turned on to acting in any way, I think it helps, you know, in every level of their life. I mean, corporations are having acting teachers come in now and vocal coaches to teach people how to, like you say, how to present stuff. And it makes a huge difference, but especially in just how you feel, your confidence. I mean, you know, when you get off stage and you've had a good rehearsal or a good performance, you just feel amazing. And maybe it doesn't last for longer than a few hours, but it's an amazing feeling to be able to pass that on as much as. I mean, I remember that when I was about 14, I had my first really good acting teacher, and like he was an amazing actor, and he did musicals, and it made a huge difference on my life, just for him to say, yeah, I know you can do this. This is something you can do if you want. Makes a huge difference. And now I'm putting it into, years later, podcasting. So it's still useful because, you know, oh, there he is. There she is. There's the dog.
Animals, for a moment's peace.
Did pretty good for a while, though.
Yeah, we got a little while out of here.
Yeah, got a while. What kind of dog?
He's half Chihuahua and half Great Dane.
Really? No.
Not really.
Like what? This isn't. It's possible.
No,
you know?
I'm sorry. Boom! Come here. Calm down. He's I don't know what he is. He's a mutt. He's a rescue. He's part this, part that, and he's a good boy.
Maybe he was getting jealous because you were getting all the attention. I know that
I think
happened.
the postman came and he got a bit excited.
Oh, okay. So are you having to teach almost remotely now? Can you do live teaching at this point?
Both.
Both. You can do
There's
both.
restrictions. I mean, we have to wear a mask and be distant, but that's good. It's not really good to be singing right next to somebody anyway, because you're not going to. When would you stand on stage and sing like you would if you was someone was right here in your ear?
Right.
So, yeah. No, I have to do also on Zoom and in person as well, which I much prefer in person. I find it much more. It's much easier to engage.
If anyone is listening and not getting that, there's a dog in the background.
There's a big dog.
No one's coughing. A big dog. Yeah, I have. Zoom has saved my podcast because I was doing it in studio, and still would rather be sitting across from someone I completely understand. I mean, it's so different having a conversation through a screen, but the other side of it is I get to speak to people, a country away and sometimes a continent away that I wouldn't be able to speak to otherwise. So that part is amazing, to be able to reach out this far and talk to people is really something, because it would cost a good deal more to fly where you are, or have you flown here and put up. It's definitely a bit of a money saver, but yeah, there are challenges. There are definitely challenges. It's hard. You can't have the same conversation, and especially lesson over the Zoom.
Yeah, it certainly makes it a little more challenging. But hopefully this will all pass, There'll be some sort of normal. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, well,
I hope it won't last forever, that's all.
It won't last forever.
When we come back together, there will be improvements because we'll appreciate each other more.
I sure hope so. That's what we're all hoping. And I think it won't be too long. My wife and I watch way too much news and information about it, especially my wife. But things are, there are a lot of different possibilities for being able to get back to normal sooner than later. So, or at least back to something like normal. It's really been something. But it also has shown that people can get through stuff, People can get through anything. There's all kinds of creative ideas coming out of this of how to keep connecting with people and with each other, and some of them great, some not so great, but we're still working. We're still here. It's still happening. I mean, you were able to do an entire album, which is pretty amazing with, and not just at your house. That's pretty incredible that you were able to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope that this will bring about some change within the entertainment industry. Not by the album, but rather the situation. That, and not to pick on anyone in particular, but okay, Duck Dynasty's great, and Kardashians, but would you rather be seeing them in your magazines and television and news feeds and in your entertainment media, or the very talented people from Cirque du Soleil who are currently out of work, and the people who would otherwise be on the West End? And why should these wonderful theatrical experiences of Broadway and these shows that people cannot experience right now, with the current technology, we should be able to deliver that through television and other similar mediums to marry these two forms of entertainment again. And I remember when when I was growing up, there was a lot more cultural programming on the 4 channels that we received in the UK. I know Americans find that crazy. We had 4 channels for the longest time. And growing up, there was always a lot more, I felt like there was a lot more content on there that involved people who are practitioners within the actual performance art. And I would like to see a return to that. And I hope that that will be an outcome of all this, the change in the industry and all this that's happening, is that will happen on television. We will see a lot more talented people being given the opportunity to do their talent, and not in a competitive way. You know, these variety acts where they come on and they get done with booed by a panel of judges. Okay, yeah, you're spinning plates, but that's a lot. You try it.
Yeah, no, I can't.
It's not fair to put different people with different skills up against each other. And if the only opportunity you get to experience variety acts and light entertainment is in a competitive environment, well, that's BS, because it's not a competitive sport. You want to watch, go watch people run around in a circle in a track. You know, go watch people kick a football around. This isn't that. This is art, and I think it would be nice to see more of it celebrated for what it is, rather than treated as competition.
I for one would love to see that. I mean, you were very lucky to have the BBC growing up, which we did not have. You know, we didn't have that until cable. That's where we got to see a lot of that programming. There was a long time ago, even before my time, they had this. They would have theater programs on, and some of the greatest American actors, you know, their first productions were in these. Basically, they were videotaped theater performances, and it would be amazing to see that come back. You know, the film that they put out of Hamilton was incredible, and it was kind of a combination of that. I didn't realize. Recently, I saw a bit more about what they did, and they kind of combined filmmaking and theater, and you got a really good sense of that play. You know, nothing like sitting in an audience and seeing a performance, but still to expose more people to that kind of performance would be would be amazing.
I feel like Grease 2 kind of killed off the movie musical. And all these little attempts to resuscitate it have so far failed because the shadow of that cast is so long. But the technology and filmmaking has changed, and now that kind of static experience of filming theatre is no longer what's expected. It's no, you know, that's no longer. We've moved so far beyond that this experience of watching Hamilton was. I hate Hamilton. It was really cinematic, very engaging.
Somebody has to.
And it would be great. It would be great to have. And also, we have now, in a totally new way, we have streaming services straight to people's homes. You don't have to wait for something to come on. You don't have for something to be popular enough for millions of households to want to watch it all at the same time, for advertisers to pay for it to be programmed onto the TV or however it works. You can now find really strange, wonderful pieces of entertainment through these very specialist channels. I was watching something the other day called The Rise and Fall of Mahagoni, which is a very strange opera. I thought, well, then there's hope for me. This makes me want to screen. And so as people become more hungry for new musicals and also tired of the old, you know, it's one. Les Mis is amazing, and Mr. God is wonderful, and Phantom
I was
going to
ask you about Les Mis,
but there's more.
What you thought of that?
Those are all 25 years old, and there's so much wonderful new talent to film it, to film these shows, to get it out on streaming services, so that people, even if you're far away from a fringe theatre or a theatre festival or fringe scene, can still enjoy these crazy, you know, madcap grassroots shows, because that's where that's the zeitgeist is in all of those. What were you going to ask me about Les Mis?
Oh, if you hated that too, because
I love it. It's amazing. Depends who's singing it.
I was really impressed with the last movie version. because of how they.
I have to sing Javert though when it's on.
That would be better. I wish I could have you sing that while I watched it. That's my only. Yeah, that was kind of my only gripe with that movie.
The character of Javert will be played by John.
The technology. What they did though was so different because they were singing as they filmed. That's not done very often. And I thought that really opened up a different performance. I think that's really what made that movie stand out, is that the actors were singing it. They weren't lip syncing. And that makes a big difference. Lip syncing and singing is different.
What did you make of Cats?
I still haven't seen Cats, mainly because it didn't get very good. Reception.
I loved it.
Did you? Okay, now I'll have to watch it then.
Was it the best musical, the best movie I've ever seen in my whole life? No. Is it something that I would find very enchanting as a child and quite enchanting as an adult? Yeah. And was I moved to tears? Surprisingly, yes. Twice.
Wow.
And for that to happen in a story where there is nothing happening and no consequence, that's quite extraordinary.
Right.
Especially in a movie with James Corden.
Yes.
That's not the kind of thing you're going to say, I cried twice in a movie with James Corden and Rebel Wilson, but I did. And I tell you, though, both times it was when Jennifer Hudson opened her mouth. I just couldn't. She's just magical. Like, I get goosebumps just thinking about her magical voice. But her performance was wonderful. The CGI craziness. It's what a bizarre movie. And I think most of the people who had horrible things to say about it just enjoy saying horrible things. I thought it was definitely worth a watch. Might not be your cup of tea, but it's.
But it might be. You never know, because I do like musicals. I mean, the last thing I was really surprised by was the Jesus Christ Superstar live version that they did with. Oh, geez, now I'm forgetting his name. He's a really good jazz R&B singer, and he can't remember the.
That guy.
That guy. But so many of these, it was a network. We're going to do this live on a network. It's honestly one of my favorite musicals because I really like the music, because there's a lot of drums in it. And I like the music from that show. So I thought, don't screw this up. I'll give it 5 minutes. The minute Judas comes on, it's phenomenal. I mean, that character always steals that. Oh, did I lose you? That character always steals that show. But he... happened again. The performer who plays that, and everyone in it, John Legend. John Legend did as well as John Legend can do playing that part. I'll just put it that way. But as well as he can do. But all the other performers were, and it was done as a play. So that I like too. They didn't try and make it something else. They filmed a play on stage. And did a really good job of that. So anyway, enough of the theater reviews, although I could do more. But I know you've got to go somewhere. So I will let you go. It's really been great having you on the show. It's been fantastic. It's been my
pleasure. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope your audience have enjoyed our conversation.
I hope so too. I think they will, because I want them to go out and see and listen to and pick up. I spaced out the name. What am I doing here? Soviet Zion. SovietZion.com. So this has been. Were you still talking? This is Joel Albrecht, and I've been talking to Giles Howe. He is the creator, producer, mastermind, also an amazing performer behind Soviet Zion, and I really appreciate you being on the show, and I appreciate all of you for listening. Go to the Soviet Zion website and check it out. It's quite a piece. It's pretty amazing piece of art, and I hope you all listen to it. And I hope you all come back and listen to this podcast again. And don't be shy about sharing it. Share it with your friends. And as I always say, be good to each other. And be good to yourselves.